conclusion of the previous exercise is, in this context, each economy is going to produce just one kind of good. Then it's going to export part of that production, which is going to be the import of the other economy. And that export in a certain way is in exchange of import of the other goods. So each economy is going to consume both kind of goods, nevertheless each of them is going to produce just one kind, just in one specific industry. So it's going to be their production. Now, even in the case that you didn't get really well the previous exercise, here we are going to have another exercise which is similar to the previous one. Okay? So this is coming from the book of reference that we have, the one that is from Krugman, Melitz and Ockwells, and this is the first one. Okay? So here we have one economy, and we are going to start with the easy scenario, in which we have the labor of that economy, and also we have the unit labor requirement in each of the goods. Here we have A for apples and B for bananas, okay? So with this information we are able to get this function. What is that? In fact, that is the PPF, because we are going to connect the two goods that we can produce. We can produce apples and we can produce banana. Q is because it's quantity, okay? And we know that if we are in the PPF curve, we are using all our resources, so all the labor. This number 3 is coming for the unit labor requirement, so it's the number of workers that you need to get just one unit, here of banana and here of apple. So depending on the number of units of banana, you are going to need a number of labor, and the same thing for the banana sector. Okay, so and that is the PPF. You can see that the combination of the two goods can be any. In fact, in the PPF we have many different possible combinations, and that is possible because the total labor in that sector plus the total labor in the other sector must be equal to the total labor of that population, of that country. Okay, as I said previously, I like to have this expression but in terms of quantity of apple and also in terms of quantity of quantity of banana. So that's why I have this. This so is coming from, I want to isolate this term. This is with a positive sign, so goes to the other side of the equal with a negative sign. And the number 3, which is multiplying, goes to the other side dividing. Okay? Now we are going to do the same thing but for the quantity of banana. So this is with a positive sign, go to the other side with the negative sign. And this, which is multiplying, now goes dividing. You see? Thanks to that way of working, we are going to be able to get the PPF curve just taking 2 points. Which point I'm going to consider the most easier ones? When the quantity of banana is 0, I'm going to get the quantity of apples, and vice versa. So I know if this value is 0, I know, so here we have banana. When we have a production of banana equal to 0, it's because in this vertical we are here, in the 0 point. And in that case, I know that the production of apple is going to be 1200 over 3, which is 400. So I'm getting this value, this point. Now I'm going to get the other. So the quantity of apple is equal to 0. Quantity of apples is in the horizontal, so 0 is when I'm here. In that case, I know that the quantity, the maximum amount of banana that I can get is 1200 over 2, which is 600, is here. So in fact, the thing that I'm doing is getting that value. Now, because I know it's a straight line, I can join those values with a straight line, and that is my PPF. Okay? I think that the next question is about the opportunity cost of banana. So, you can choose 2 ways to do this. You can consider the information of this point, and then make the slope. In fact, yeah, because I have banana here, it's going to be the slope of that curve. If instead of that I have banana here, I'm going to make the slope and then I inverse the number and then I'm going to get that opportunity cost of banana. Here is just the slope of the curve because I have here apples. I don't know if I was saying bananas or apples. So apples, okay? The slope of this is opportunity cost of apple. One way, as I told you previously, it's going to be, I want to see the opportunity cost of producing 1 unit more of apple, so it's going from this point to this point, and it can be seen as the variation, how change bananas, the quantity of bananas, over the quantity change of apples, coming from here to here, because from here to here, the thing that I am serving is the increase of apples, and that is going to involve a decrease of banana. In fact, I already know in absolute term, okay, because this is going to be in absolute term, that the variation, the total variation of bananas is going to be final value 0 minus initial value 600, so in absolute term is 600 over, now this is the effect that the increase of apple has in banana, but I need to know why is the reason of that change, and that change is because apple has increased from 0 to 400. So final value 400 minus 0 in absolute terms is 400. Okay, so this 0 with this 0, it's gone. And in fact, you can get this value also. So you can do this more slowly, that is my recommendation. Looking from the previous theory of the chapter, okay, you have that there. But essentially the thing that you want to analyze is how this changes when you increase this. That's why we are going from this point in which the value of apple is 0 to this point in which now is higher. So you are going to see the effect of increasing this quantity of apples, and it's going to be this decrease of bananas. That decreases because we have an increase of apple in 400, but I want to know the effect per unit of apples, so that's why we make the division, okay? And now I get how does it change the number of bananas per unit of apple. That is one way, but now I want to do the other. I mean, using the derivative. As I told you previously, I want to see the effect of apples in banana. So I need this expression. Here I have how the quantity of bananas depends on the quantity of apples. So now I'm able to see that relationship. In fact, the causal effect relationship. To get that is the thing that I have here, okay? So the opportunity cost of one apple is how does it change the quantity of banana when you increase in 1 unit, that is the derivative of apples. And that is when you are doing the derivative of this. Here you can divide this element in 2 elements, 1200 over 2 minus 3 over 2 times the quantity of apple. The first element, the derivative is 0 because it's just a number. The second, you have a number minus 3 over 2 times the quantity of apple. So the derivative respect to the quantity of apples, so that means that is your variable, is the thing that can change, it's the thing that you want to see the effect of changes in that thing in the other variable. That is your variable, so the derivative of that part is minus 3 over 2. That is the slope, but because you want to have the opportunity cost is telling us already negative sign, so you can forget about the negative sign and just keep the positive sign in this case. So this is in fact the same value of this. 3 divided by 2, 4 divided by 2 is 3 divided by 2, right? So that is the opportunity cost of one apple, and then my recommendation is to do the same thing for banana. So you have three alternatives. One is going from this point to this point, another is considering this derivative, so instead of doing this derivative, please just make the other derivative, or directly considering this value and inverse the numbers. Okay, so that was, I think, this was for, let me see, it was for A, part A, this was the part B, I guess, and then the part C is talking about, was asking us about the relative price of apples. Well, we are in a closed context, so that means that the opportunity cost of apples is exactly the same to the relative price of apples. Okay? So that means that this relative price of apple is 3 over 2. Because in a closed context we have that the PPA and the relative price curve is the same. Now we are going to explain why is that. So here we have why. In a closed context we have that the relative price of apple is equal to the opportunity cost of apple, okay? Or the slope of that function. We know that in a closed economy, well, in any case, always wages has to be equal. Otherwise, people is going to change one job by other. So if I'm working in the apple sector, but I observing higher wages in the other sector, I can change the sector in which I'm working, okay? That is the assumption that we are making here. So that means that eventually wages must be equal. Otherwise, people is going to go to the other sector. As I told you previously, if here there are more the wages or salaries are higher, then more people from this sector, the apple sector, goes to the other sector. That is going to increase the total production, because production of something here depends on the labor that you have. As higher is the volume of labor, eventually the supply of that good is going to be higher, right? And as higher is the supply of something, here bananas, smaller is going to be the price. Still remember, your weight is equal to your marginal productivity, but also the price of your good. So if here the wages are really high, but now we have more and more people there, the production is higher and higher and higher, so the supply, the total supply in that economy is going to be much higher than before, so the price of that good is going to be much smaller than previously, so the whole wage is going to decrease. Eventually, people is going to stop in the case in which this weight is equal to this weight. So that's why we know that that is going to be the final equilibrium. And that means that the weight in each economy, which is equal to the other sector, in both sectors, is equal to the marginal productivity of the worker times the price of the good that they are selling, right? So my wages depends on my productivity, how good I'm working, but also in the price of the good that I'm producing. If I'm producing a good with a small value, then my wage is not going to be so high as in the case of another worker with the same productivity but is producing a good with a higher value, right? So this also is equal to this one, because the marginal productivity is the inverse of the unit labor requirement, in the way that as smaller is the unit labor requirement, so better is the technology and higher is the productivity, the whole thing is going to be bigger. So that means smaller is this, higher is the productivity. It makes sense, because this is the number of labor that you need. If this number is really small, it's because the technology is so good that each worker is really productive, and vice versa. As higher is this value, it's because the technology is not really good, so you need many workers, and that means that the productivity of the workers are really small. Okay, so you can see that this, you have this which is multiplying, so it can go to the other side dividing. This is dividing, so go to the other side multiplying. So we know that the relative price of Apple is going to be the opportunity cost of Apple. In fact, here you have an alternative to get the opportunity cost of producing one apple. So you can consider 2 points, you can consider the slope of the function, but also it is okay if you have the unit labor requirement of apple and the unit labor requirement of banana in this case, or in other example, it depends on the number of the name of the goods, but the methodology is the same. So here you have an alternative way of getting that opportunity cost, and you can see then that is going to be the same value, right? So that was the answer to this question. Now we have a foreign economy, and this is the information that we have from that economy. In fact, here just observing this unit labor requirement, we can have a sort of an idea where is going to be the final result in terms of international trade. Let me explain you why. So here we have the unit labor requirement of apple is 5, while in home it was 3. So the technology of home, in absolute terms, is telling us that home has an absolute advantage in the production of apple. While in the case of banana, this is 1, while in honey was 2. So it's telling me that foreign has an absolute advantage in the production of banana. So the final result in terms of not absolute term but also in comparative term must be equal. Because as I told you previously in the theory, the absolute advantage is a good concept and never is going to go against the comparative advantage. The problem of the absolute terms strategy, so just looking the absolute advantage, is that it doesn't always resolve. And it's not going to resolve when one economy is the best doing everything. But in this case, we are going to have the same result using the comparative advantage concept. But let's continue. So we have this information. Also it's important labor, the amount of labor, because here we are having different level of labor, so that is going to have an effect also. So let's do the PPF now in this foreign economy. We have labor, unit labor requirement of apple times the quantity of apple. Unit labor requirement in the case of banana is just 1. So if you want to get 1 banana, you just need 1 worker, so that's why it's just QP. As I told you previously, I like to have this expression isolating the 2 possible variables that we have here. Quantity of banana, banana of apples. And just keep in mind that to get this isolated, this which is with a positive sign goes to the other side with a negative sign. This which is multiplying goes to the other side dividing. Okay? So let's see now how's the way of getting the PPF. It's really easy. When I have this expression, it's going to be the value of this variable when the production of banana is 0. So that's why here we are going to have that when this is 0, this the quantity. So banana is here. This is 0. So the quantity of apple must be up. Here is. It looks like a 0, but it's a 6, okay? Now makes sense. So when this is 0 is 800 over 5, which should be 160. When the quantity of apple is 0, so we are here in terms of apple, the quantity, the maximum amount of banana is 800, because 0 times any number is 0. So plus 800 is 800. So now considering these 2 points, I'm able to get the PPF curve. What about the relative price or the opportunity cost? So if I want to get the relative price of apple, because I have here apple, and also at the same time I want to get the opportunity cost of apple, I can use this information that I have, which is this over this. Okay? So as I just told you previously, one way of getting that values is just dividing the unit labor requirement of this variable over the unit labor requirement of the other variable, and that is the opportunity cost of producing 1 unit more apple, but also in a closed context is the relative price of apple. Okay, so that was for the exercise 2. Let's go to the exercise 3. Now we have the two economies, and the question here is about the consumption of apples. We have the consumption of bananas. In each economy, the consumption of bananas is 300. So that means that the production must be equal, because so far these two economies are close, so we don't have trade between each other. The only way of consuming 300 units of bananas is because you are producing that. The question is about the quantity that you are producing of apples in an efficient case, so when you are using all your labor. To get that value is really easy. You just need that expression. In fact, because we have bananas, we want the quantity of apples. So we are going to use this in the home economy and this expression for the foreign economy. In fact, where we have a quantity of banana, we need to introduce its quantity, in both cases 300. So in that case, we are going to get automatically the amount of, or the quantity of apples. In this economy, it must be 200, here 100. And that is consumption, but also is production. But to have this graph in a proper way, so we are observing that production is equal to consumption, we need the PPF curve, which is there, the relative price curve, which is also there. The problem to observing both of them is because we will have one over the other, but also we need the demand side, and the demand side is coming from the indifferent curves. If you remember, it's that curve in which all the combinations, so each point is giving me the same utility. I don't care if I'm in a one point or in a different point in that PPF curve. And always is going to be that indifferent curve that is really far away. How much? As possible. So possible is because it's touching the PPF. Outside of the PPF, we know that in a closed context, that consumption is not possible. That's why in this case, I'm giving a typical indifferent curve where consumer love like balanced basket of consumption. We are going to have something like this. It's going to have this shape. Well, it's not really perfect, sorry. It's going to have this shape and it's going to touch at least that point. We know that this point, because we know here is the consumption of banana, so this is going to be by sure the consumption of apples. So now we have in a proper way both economies, the graph of both economies before of international trade. Now we are going to see the difficult part, the tricky part. We are going to let them trade, so the relative price of apple is not going to be this value or this value. In fact, it's going to be in between. We already know that this economy, you can observe that this is the opportunity cost of apple. This economy is smaller than this economy, so we should expect that this economy is going to specialize in the production of apples, while this economy is going to specialize in the production of banana. As I was telling you, this relative price of apple is going to be in a point between this and this value. We don't know which is going to be the value, so that's why in the exercise we need to have that information, and also we need to know at least one level of consumption, okay, in each economy, and then with that information we are going to be able to get everything, the consumption and production of each good in each economy. So that means also we are going to have the level of export and import of each economy. Now we are going to do the equilibrium, but in an open context. So that means what the relative price of apples or banana is the same for both economies. It's going to be between the previous values, the same cases of these two economies. So now we know that the relative price of apples is equal to 3. So that is going to be here, but also here. What is the meaning of that when we are in home? You can observe that 3 is higher than 3 over 2. So that new relative price curve, that is also the possibility consumption curve, is going to have a higher slope. But also it's true that at least it has to touch in one point the PPF with a higher slope. Just always keep in mind that higher slope is because it's closer to something like this. Okay, I don't care about the sign now, if it's positive or negative, just the value is higher, so higher slope. And it has to touch the PPF. In the starting point we have the relative price over the PPF. Now because the slope is higher, it just can be something like the red line. In the case of the foreign economy, the relative price was 5. Now it's just 3, so it's smaller. This economy wasn't really efficient producing apple, so the supply of apple wasn't enough or so high as here, so that's why the relative price of that good, which was a little bit more scarce, the price was higher. Just remember that if we have a good that is scarce, the supply is small and the price is high. So the relative price here of apple, it was higher than here. Now we have a new relative price, 3, that is still smaller than this. So we should have a new relative price curve with a flatter slope respect to the initial one. The initial one was over the PPF of that economy, the new relative price, so the possibility consumption curve is going to have this flatter slope. It still has to touch the PPF curve. In fact, the PPF curve doesn't change. Okay, so that is really important. My possibility of production is still in the same place. In all of these possible combinations, and in all of these possible combinations, so I'm talking about the black lines. How is that? Because the number of labor is the same, and with the tray openness, we don't have new technology. Okay, we are assuming that the only thing that we have with tray openness is more consumers at the other side of the frontier, but nothing else. In terms of capacity of production, it's the same. Same amount of labors, same unit labor requirements, so the same technology. More things. So, the meaning of this, well, we know that the production is going to be in the point, or it's just possible, when it's in the PPF course, but also considering the relative prices. Why the relative prices? Because the relative prices is connected with the labor market. And here, production is equal to labor. Without labor, we can produce. So that's why it's really interesting to find the point in which both curves are together, are touching, because it's going to mean that it's possible, PPF, and also it's an equilibrium situation in the labor market. So in the home economy is here, this is on the supply side of the market, so production. The home economy is just going to produce apples, while the foreign economy is here, it's going to produce bananas, just bananas. So now we have the production. So here is for home, here is for the foreign economy. Production of apple in the case of home is 400. Okay. In the case and 0 of banana, so completely specialization in just one good. And in the case of foreign economy, it's just banana, and the production of apple is 0. Okay, this is 800. Also, we need an additional data, and you have that data in the exercise. It's at least the consumption in the international context of one economy about one specific good. Here we have for the home economy the consumption of apples after trade, which is 250. So let's go to home, consumption of apple, 250. Okay, with that, we are going to be able to know which is the export of that economy. In fact, it's the total production minus the amount that is consumed, that is going to be the part of the production that you are selling to the other economy. So it's the consumption of the other economy, because your export is the import of the other economy. When you are selling, anyone else is buying, and here is consuming. So the difference between 400 and 250 is 150. That is going to be the consumption of the other economy. Okay, nice. Now, what about the consumption of bananas in its economy? Well, before that, let me put that consumption of apple here in the foreign economy. It's 150, so in a place more or less like this, okay? So let's go to put 150 here, okay? 150. It's going to be in the red line that here. Why is that? Because we are talking about consumption, and that relative price curve is also the consumption possibility curve. And we need to get, still need to get that value, and also we need to get that value. We know that because we are talking about consumption, that that relative prices must match the indifferent curve, okay? Indifferent curve is always connecting prices with utility. Relative price curve, indifferent curve. So by sure it's going to be here, the new indifferent curves, and here in this other case, okay? If you compare with the previous one, you are like a little bit more far away from this point, which is 0, 0 consumption. Here we are talking about consumers, so that means as higher is the amount of consumption, happier these people is, okay? These people are, sorry. So that's why the utility here is higher than here, the utility here is higher than here. So international trade is going to be, under this model, something good for people in general. Well, but what is this value? We don't have this value, neither this value. The thing that we are observing is the relative price of apples, so the inverse number is the relative price of banana. And this is really important, and maybe this part wasn't so clear previously in the previous exercise. And I want to emphasize this because it's the key here. So this number 3, the meaning of that is, okay, this is the relative price of apple is equal to 3, so to get 1 apple, you need 3 bananas, okay? Given the price of apples, given the price of bananas, if you want to get 1 apple, given the price of that apple, you need like selling 3 bananas, okay? That's why you need 3 bananas, because if you sell that bananas, with that money, you can buy an apple given the price of apples. So, the number 3 is to get 1 apple, you need 3 bananas, or with 1 apple, given the price of that apple, given the money that you can get from that apple, you can get 3 bananas, okay? And here we have the same kind of information, but instead of apple, banana. So my recommendation is just put the same thing that I given you here, but in terms of banana. So to get 1 banana, I need 0.33 apples, or with 1 banana, I can get 0.33 apples, okay? So now, with that information, we can get the other values. How is that? Well, we have, for instance, the production of apple and the consumption of apples at home, so we know the number of apples is selling to the other economy, and it's selling that in exchange of the other good, in exchange of apples. So it's like I'm home and I have 150 units of apple extra over my consumption. With that apples, that is the price. This is for 1 apple, but if instead of just having 1 apple, I have the distance from here to here, I mean 150 apples, given that amount, I can get 3 times 150, right? Because this value is, with 1 apple, I can get 3 units of banana. If instead of having just 1 apple, I have 150 apple extra, giving my production 400 and giving my consumption 250, with those 150, I can get 150 times 3 bananas. So, and that value is the consumption of banana that I can make. So, it's like I'm selling apple, 150 units of apple, and I'm buying bananas. I'm giving the cost of each banana and giving the money, the price that I can get per apples. In total, I can get, let me see, 150 times 3, so 450 units of bananas. And now, easily I can get then the consumption of bananas here. If this economy is the only one that is producing bananas, and I know that the other economy is consuming, of course, from here, 450 units of banana, by sure this economy is consuming the difference. So you can put 800 minus 450, so this is equal to 350. Now let's put all these numbers here. So we are talking about banana for an economy, for instance, here is this value, 350. And here, this economy is just producing banana. So this production from 0 to 150, all of this is importing, it's import, which is going to be the export of the other economy. So this is done from 200 to 400 is going to be the export. Okay, let me see more data here. Consumption of bananas in the home economy, 450 is here. Okay. So now we have that this economy is consuming 450 units of apples, because in that economy there is zero production of bananas, because in that economy the production of banana is zero. All the total consumption is going to be import from the other economy. So if the other economy is producing 800 units of bananas and is consuming 350, so this distance must be the part that they are exporting, which these people is importing. So this is our export and it's the same value as this, okay? And now in the other case we have that this economy is producing 400 units, is consuming 250 units, so the difference is exporting, what is the amount that these people is importing, so 150. So now we have everything. We have what is the production of each good in each economy, where is the consumption, and which part of that is coming from abroad, and what part of the production is going to abroad in terms of export, and in the other case in terms of imports.